Okay, we are at the end of chapter 14, chapter Yudalid. This will be our last class on the chapter. So we left off yesterday with our discussion of how is it possible for us to fulfill the oath that we are made to swear prior to coming down into our bodies. The swear or the oath of Tiei Tzaddik, that we have to be a Tzaddik. We already described that this is something that is beyond our capability. This is something that has to do with the level of my soul that's coming into my body, and that's what it's based on. So how is it possible for God to make this oath about me being a tzaddik of something that is not within my hands? So the Alter Rebbe explained that what we need to do is we need to set aside certain periods of time that we are going to meditate with a mindset of a tzaddik. And in particular, we started discussing the mindset of going away from negative things, going away from bad things, not letting the physical world really take control of us and drive us to do all different types of things that we really probably should not be involved in. We'll pick up from 5 lines from the bottom of the page by the period. So then it says, V'chein kol tanuge olam hazeh, and also all the pleasures of this physical world. Hachacham roye es hanoilad. A wise person sees what is going to be born out of them in the future. Shesaifan lirka v'lios rima v'ashba. In other words, what we're saying is like this, that if you really look at all the physical things of this world that really grab our attention, you'll notice that every single one of those things is limited. It's not going to last forever. It's not going to keep our emotional excitement for such a long period of time. They disappear. What happens is that we get into something, and then it's like all of a sudden we lose our enthusiasm for it. Very often, right? I remember way back when there was a phrase that people are constantly looking to fill the hole in their soul. Right? They feel like there's something missing in their life. So they go after one thing, another. Oh, let's buy a new car. Oh, buy a new house. Oh, get a new watch. Get a new this. Get a new that. And they're constantly trying to fill that hole, that something that's missing in them with all these physical things. And for sure, the advertising companies are definitely aimed at that. If you want to be a strong man or a popular man or a whatever it is, then you should buy this product. And without this product, I don't know how you could possibly do it. Right? They're trying to reach out to us and try to, so to speak, brainwash us into getting us to purchase certain physical items or go after the physicality in this world with the hope that this is going to make me into whatever it is that I want to become. When in fact, all it takes, like he says here, is a chacham royes and noilad, which means a wise person could see what is going to be born out after this. It means that by buying a new car, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be this incredible person. Or by buying a new house or a new telephone or a new iPhone or whatever it is, right? In other words, that is not going to fill that hole in my soul of whatever it is that I'm really striving, looking for, and wanting to be. So a person has to realize this. He has to sit down and he has to recognize that these are all, like smoke and mirrors, right? Of trying to delude us into this life of almost like a fantasy life of if only I could get this, if only I could get that, then all my problems will be solved. Or, when I'm having a difficulty, what do? Let's go eat chocolate, right? Or dig into the ice cream, or whatever. Like, this is going to solve. It's not going to, we know inside of ourselves, this is not going to solve it. This is not going to solve my problems. This is not going to do what it is that I'm hoping that it will do. So what the Alter Rebbe is saying here is that look more deeply into the things that my animal soul is driving me towards. And recognize, is it really worth it? Is it really as tempting as it looks at first glance, right? So many of these things that they look so tempting. I need this, or I want this, or right. We see how many politicians that they, with one, with one little thing that they do wrong, they could throw out 40 years of an entire, a career. It's crazy. What tempted them to do this, right? In other words, because our animal souls are driving us to do things, but if we would just stop a second, and it's almost like a big balloon, and if we could just poke a hole in that balloon with a needle, right, all of a sudden it's like all the hot air just goes out, and you say, oh, well, it's not really such a big thing after all. So what the Alter Rebbe is suggesting here is that so many of these physical taivas, of these physical desires, are in fact really not what they're made out to be. And a tzaddik, by definition, is not running after these things. Because a tzaddik realizes that this is not where it's at. You're not going to gain happiness or fame or whatever it is that you're looking for from this physical thing. So what the Alter Rebbe is suggesting is that we can meditate on that a little bit. We can meditate on this idea and recognize and teach ourselves that this is not the answer to my questions. This is not going to bring me to where I want to be, right? That I could realize that, okay, like we were talking about in yesterday's class, food. Yes, I want to eat food. I have to eat food. I'm not here to go on a fast for the next 50 years. That's not what it's about. But food could be fuel, or it could be an entire life, right? To the extent that, you're going out to this restaurant and that restaurant, to the extent that, I remember, we were growing up and you go to a restaurant, and then what would you talk about when you're at that restaurant? You talk about, oh, what restaurant are we going to go to next week, right? We're eating Italian food now. Well, we should really try out. I heard about this new great restaurant, this Chinese restaurant, or whatever. It's always that lure of maybe, this is going to bring me to that happiness, or is going to bring me to that fulfillment that I'm looking for. And in fact, when we take a look at it from a deeper perspective, we see very clearly that that is not the direction. And so the Alter Rebbe is suggesting that we should spend time, right? Spend a few minutes, whatever it is, a day or however long you can do it for, and think through these desires. Think through these desires that each one of us have, because we are normal people and we live in a normal world that causes us to want all of these things. So it's a very normal thing to do and a normal thing to want. But can we poke a needle into that balloon and recognize that this is not the answer? Now again, as I mentioned yesterday, it's not about going off to the mountains somewhere or sitting in a cave somewhere and disappearing from society. That's not the direction of Orthodox Jews. That's not the direction that the Alter Rebbe is suggesting in any remote way. It's very much about being in the world of, God willing, getting married, and God willing, having a family, and God willing, having a job and having a home. And so it's not about like, let's put down the physical world and disappear off into some mountain ridge somewhere and never to be seen again. That's totally not the direction that we're talking about. It's just not being totally driven by the physical world in an abnormal manner. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. So now he says, in addition to this, he says also, the opposite. Now we've talked about going away from the bad. Well, what about going towards the good? And that's what he says now. Because at the end of the day, like we said, on the top of the page, on top of page Chav, a tzaddik, what makes him so disgusted by these things, by these desires, is because he has such a tremendous pleasure in Hashem. Because he has such a tremendous pleasure in Hashem, and he has so much love for Hashem in this incredible way, it makes it almost disgusting. Anything that is against Hashem, so to speak, or covers over, conceals the light of God in this world in any manner. So he says we have to also spend time thinking in terms of that. By meditating on the greatness of Hashem, according to what you're able to. Even though we recognize in ourselves, we're not expecting of ourselves that we are going to reach the level of a tzaddik. We've been describing a tzaddik for chapters now. We know that that is not something that I am going to become. And that's not the goal. Right? So it's true that I am going to meditate on this incredible love that I should be having towards Hashem, and these incredible feelings that that we have within the world of Yiddishkeit and within the world of Chassidus that we talk about. But I recognize also that it's not really where I'm ever going to necessarily reach. That's what he says. Kim b'dimyonos. But we are able to have like a little bit of a vision of it, a little bit of a scene of it, a little bit of let's call it a touch of what that is, right? Afal pikein hu yaseh es shelo lekayim es hashavua shemashbiim tieh tzadik ve'Hashem yaseh hatov be'einav. And then he adds a very interesting point on the top of page 40, and he says like this: the bottom line, and this really can be applied to everything in life, is I have to do my part. Whatever happens afterwards, that's up to God. But I have to do my part. And that's what he says here. He says here that this is the meditation that I need to do, both in terms of turning away from the desires of my animal soul, and in going towards my love for Hashem and my drive towards doing good. If Hashem, right, basically what we're saying here is that I do my part and Hashem does his part. What does it mean by Hashem does his part? What we're going to see in a little while is where we're heading with this, is it is possible, even though we said that the regular person is not going to, so to speak, reach the level of a tzaddik, but there are things that Hashem can do to lift up the regular individual. Okay, let's put that on pause for a second. We're going to see how that plays out. Va'oid, and not only that, he goes even further. Ha'hergil al kol davar shalton v'naseh teva sheni. Another point that he's bringing here. Don't think that this is a waste of time, because at the end of the day, a person that continually thinks in this manner, it is going to influence him. In other words, he's recreating his neurochannels, his brain waves. The more he thinks in this manner, the more he thinks about the points that the Alter Rebbe is saying here, it's going to start to change his perspective on life. And he's going to start to think about it and start to look at the world from this different perspective. Evidently, then this is going to change how he makes those choices that we talked about in the beginning of the chapter. When he's at that moment and things are pushing him in one way or the other, the more he focuses on this way of thinking, the more it's going to impact him, the more he himself is going to become a person that will go in that direction. That's what he's bringing out. So when he becomes accustomed to, when he gets used to, when he starts to think and think about how he should be disgusted by the evil in this world. The truth is, he says, it will become disgusting to him in a little way. It's going to happen. In a true way, it's going to really happen. And when he's going to get used to, and he's going to get accustomed to, constantly meditating on the greatness of Hashem, and how much Hashem is doing for him in his life, how much God is helping him, how much God is changing his life, that is going to make him happy. And that is going to, right, it's going to change him also. What's going to happen is, and he brings a quote from the Zohar, the more Hashem is going to see that I am down here making these efforts in this world, Hashem is going to bestow upon him from the upper world an increase of energy, like it says. And it says, perhaps it's possible that it will happen to him a spirit from above, and he will merit a level of a ruach mishoyrish ezet tzaddik, that he will merit the spirit of the root of some tzaddik, shetis'aber bo la'avod Hashem besimcha emisi. That now what's going to happen? He's going to get a bechina. Bechina means a level of the ruach, of the spirit, of a shoyrish, of a root, of a particular tzaddik that will become impregnated within him. So what he's talking about here is really a fantastic idea. This is not saying that the actual soul per se of a tzaddik will come into my body, but the ray from that soul has the potential to come into me, to uplift me, to now serve Hashem in a completely different manner. Not that I'm going to become so to speak, a tzaddik by myself, but that extra energy that's going to come into me is now going to lift me up to a different place. Because what Hashem is seeing essentially is that I am putting this unbelievable effort in. Down here in this world, Hashem is going to likewise, like a mirror, right? He will give over to me a corresponding spiritual help. Okay, like the story goes with the Arizal, that one of his students came in one time, and all of a sudden, the Arizal got up. And later on, they asked him, why did you stand up for this student? He says, what do you mean? I wasn't standing up for the student. I was standing up for the ray of the soul of Pinchas ben Yair, one of the Tanaim who lived 1,500 years before the Arizal, that came in with him. Because it happens sometimes. That's what the Kabbalah teaches us. That the godly souls, right, get impregnated, become impregnated with a ray of a soul of a tzaddik that has fulfilled all of his avodah in this world, based on what it is that I am doing in this world right now. And that, like it says, like it's written, Simchu tzaddikim b'Hashem, that the holy ones, that the righteous ones are happy right by Hashem, and with that extra energy that comes into an individual, which is literally otherworldly, it's amazing as that may be, right? He literally at that moment is able to fulfill the oath that he took when his soul came down into this world, that he should be a tzaddik. And that's the end of chapter 14.